Hello and welcome to Let's Pod This. My name is Andy Moore, and I'm joined, as I am every week, by the good doctor, Scott Melson.
Well, not every week, man. It's been
a few weeks.
It's been a minute since we've been in front of the mic together.
It has been. Well, welcome. It's good to be here together.
Is it in front of the mic or behind them? It's in front of the mic, right?
On the mic.
On the mic.
Hot mic. Yeah. Hot mic.
And we're live, right?
Yeah, we're actually streaming this live. So for the
What's up, world?
The three people who may be watching this at home.
Hi, Bo. Hi, Effie.
That's probably Mom. We just did this. It was kind of we record at various times of the day by taking vacation from work sometimes, or adjustable schedules or weekends. Often the evenings. Tonight it's a little bit later than usual, and we thought, why the hell not?
And we're both in Oklahoma on a Thursday for the first time in a couple weeks. Right?
Yeah, that's true. Where did you go? Were you in Texas too?
So I was in Texas, I think, the first time.
And then I was there last week.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And then something.
But we did a couple of other. We interviewed the Attorney General Mike Hunter. We interviewed Lieutenant Governor Matt Pinnell at the donut shop. So
and then full disclosure, you had the special episode with Sabina and Carly from OK Policy, and last week about 4:00 on Friday, we were both like, "Man, we're tired."
Yeah, we didn't want to record last week, so
we decided to take a week off.
Yeah, but thanks to everybody. If you are watching at home, my dad is watching. Hello, Dad. If you have comments or questions, please feel free. We have the stream pulled up on Facebook and also on Vimeo if you happen to be watching there, and we can see your comments. So I think we get comments on. Yeah, there's a. Oh, I'll enable chat on Vimeo. Look, you can chat on both. Excellent. So, Scott, tonight it's going to be mostly like just a really big news roundup. So I'll go ahead and roll us into that.
There it is, man. Yeah. So it's, I think, good that we took a week off last week because there's like a lot, man. Like I was going to...
Well, and last week we said like it was kind of a quiet week, but really it wasn't. We just hadn't had time to really compile it all together.
Yeah, and so this will be, you'll get a little bit of a double dose this week, but a lot of this stuff is fairly fresh, as it were. So first up, there's a nice piece from NonDoc that features some quotes from Governor Stitt. The title here is that Governor Stitt says he would absolutely oppose a Medicaid expansion ballot initiative.
This is on NonDoc?
Because
didn't he actually say this on the News OK?
He may have. The article I've got here is from NonDoc. Let me pull up and see. I confess that when I read the NonDoc article, I did not see if they were quoting him from News OK, but they may have been. Nope, you're right, 100%. News OK. My bad. Sorry, NonDoc. Sorry.
Well,
guys.
One of us read the articles.
Hey, that's just mean.
So yeah, so go ahead. He what did he say?
Yeah, so this is interesting. So this was Tuesday. He said that he would actively discourage Medicaid expansion he would discourage Oklahomans from voting for Medicaid expansion if it appears on the ballot. And as I say this, I realize that one of the things that happened last week that we haven't talked about is that there was a press conference last Friday, late in the day, from a couple of groups. Have the funders said who they are yet?
No.
Okay. Well, there are some
it was
funders.
Filed on behalf of two individuals.
Yes.
Erin Taylor was the one that I knew because she's been an advocate for the individual with disability. Her child's on the disability waiting list and has been for like 8 years.
Yes. So there are some groups that are pushing a Medicaid expansion ballot initiative. So this will go. This is we've talked about ballot expansion, we have talked about ballot initiatives at length here on the show. You need 15% of the voters that voted in the last gubernatorial election. Because turnout was so high this past year in 2018, I think that puts it at right around 170,000 signatures. 178,000 signatures, which is significantly higher than the 135 that was required for ballot initiatives prior to that.
And they only have 90 days to get those signatures.
They got 90 days to get those signatures. And this is interesting because this is a ballot initiative that would do what's called full Medicaid expansion. So we've talked here on the show about how
never go full Medicaid.
Right? We've talked about how there are some plans being kicked around the legislature this year that would kind of expand Medicaid. They would put some kind of different plans together. Ask the feds for a waiver to do Medicaid expansion in a little bit different way, a kind of Oklahoma specific way. But this ballot initiative, that's not what this is. This would say we're expanding Medicaid, the Medicaid program as it exists. We would expand it to anyone who is an able-bodied adult. I think 133% of the poverty level or less.
That sounds about right.
I believe.
Yes.
And so. If that were to go on the ballot, I think there's a lot of people who feel really strongly that it would pass. Like the chances would be really good, and the legislature is somewhat like opposed to that, and apparently so is the governor.
Well, I think the legislature doesn't like for the appearance that they're not doing their job, but the people are doing it for them, which is exactly one could argue what's happening, right? And so also, if it goes to a ballot initiative, then it means that it gets passed, and then they have to come back and kind of massage it and actually make it fit into the right place, which is what happened with like medical marijuana.
It is. I think also. I think they don't like the appearance that they're not doing their jobs. I do think though that it's a true statement to say there are a lot of people at the Capitol who do not want full Medicaid expansion for a variety of reasons. I think both are true, but I think they also know that like medical marijuana is quite popular. And so,
indeed, in every state where medical marijuana has been on the ballot, it has passed.
And in every state,
Medicaid expansion. Every state where Medicaid expansion, really,
Montana, the good people of Montana did not pass it.
I thought it was every state,
but Montana had some extenuating circumstances. But everywhere else, even fairly conservative states. Now, what has happened in some of these conservative states is that Medicaid expansion passes. And then the legislature goes back and like tries to undo it, which does not sit super well. I can imagine that people of Oklahoma would love that. But this is interesting because this is the governor kind of saying, I think that Governor Stitt, when he was running, and since he's been in office, a lot of the things he ran on and a lot of the things he's accomplished were popular with a large number of voters in the state. Maybe not a majority, but certainly a lot, and I think in many cases a majority. This is really the first time I feel like he has come out and kind of taken a stand saying like, no, this is something I would absolutely oppose. Like, I don't want to do this. I don't think it's a good idea, public opinion notwithstanding.
Right. No, it was a pretty bold stance, and it's interesting because to me that he said that because he doesn't have the power to. He just has the power of the bully pulpit or whatever, right? And he hasn't really used it yet. He's new, and so we haven't seen him we don't really know where he stands on these things. It's all, we knew with Governor Fallin pretty well, but with Governor Stitt, it's all a new day. And so for him to say, no, I'm against this, it's like, well, what if they pass something and it comes to you? And all he really said was that he's against a full expansion.
Yeah, that's a good point, right? So he says he's against what's called, let's see, They quote him here. He is against what's called
Oklahoma
straight Medicaid expansion, which is the term for Medicaid expansion that doesn't include any kind of worker training requirements. He says if that's what the language is, then he would absolutely tell voters to oppose it. He says that he's been studying ways to make Oklahoma a healthier state and improve health outcomes across the board. Been looking at other states that have expanded Medicaid to see what's working and what's not. I will just tell Governor, if you're listening or if you have been watching our live show while you have dinner right now, what works is Medicaid expansion, and what doesn't work is lots of like training and work requirements. That's what the data says. just so you know. And I will give the governor some credit here. He says that he doesn't have specific details right now, but he says, I do want to put together a plan that would improve healthcare. He says you can't just say no, don't vote for that. You have to say here is a better way to do it.
Which I thought was an important.
That's a huge caveat, and I think that's to his credit, and I think that if he puts a plan out that people can compare, then I think that's a great. I think that's the way the government should work. So
I agree.
If you want to hear more about this, check out News OK. I have no doubt that we'll be talking more about Medicaid expansion as to see if they get the signatures. I have a hunch that they will.
Yeah,
I think it's going to happen.
I will say, as an aside related to Medicaid expansion, that yesterday, Wednesday, was the rally for coverage at the state capitol, which we discussed last week on the show with Sabina and Carly. Scott, you spoke there.
I did. I brought the words.
I did not. I haven't heard it. I wonder if I can go back online and watch it. I didn't get to. I wasn't there when you spoke.
You can, because you weren't there, and my wife wasn't there, and it was just me.
I'll print out a screenshot and mail it to you or something like.
No, you can watch it. You can watch it online. And to my lovely wife, she had an important meeting at work that she was not able to miss, and that's
Well, that's the hard truth about doing advocacy work, is that it occurs during work hours for the rest of us too, right?
No, totally. I mean, I had to. I mean, the folks about OK Policy asked me if I would say a few words, and I said absolutely. But I mean, I had to. I was at the morning that I wasn't in clinic, right? Like that's
right. You had to move stuff around.
Yeah.
I looked at my PTO balance this morning and noted that it is much lower than it typically is, because I've taken off a lot of time to go to the Capitol for things like that.
That's
Not so
important.
much this year, but all right. Well, let's move on to our next item. Is Wayne Green does the math on everything. This is from the Tulsa World. Scott, this is one of yours.
It is. So this is a great piece. Wayne is the editorial page editor at the Tulsa World, and he's got this great series, Wayne Green Does the Math, where he kind of goes through like budget proposals, or he goes through certain agencies and programs, and really says like, what does this mean in terms of money? What does this mean in terms of like teachers, classroom funding, all of these sorts of things. It's a really great series. You can read any of his articles in about 3 to 4 minutes, so I really suggest you check it out. This most recent one focuses on the prison system. So, for instance, Andy, did you know that as of 2016, I think you did know that Oklahoma is number 1 in the world for incarceration?
I did.
Do you know where we sit as compared to the national average?
We're the highest.
Well, yes, but would you know by how much?
A lot.
Yeah.
More than double. 112%.
No.
I like that I stumped you on that.
You're way off. It's much closer to 200%.
Son of a bitch.
Yes. So we incarcerated 1,079 people per 100,000 adults. The national average is 600 per 100,000 adults, so we're almost double. If we were just at the national average, that means Oklahoma would have 15,327 fewer people in prison, and we would save, conservatively, $100 million a year.
Okay, I just want to recap 2 of those numbers that I'm choking on. 15,000 fewer people. That doesn't mean 0 people. That just means 15,000 less than
there are now.
Right. Than the tens of thousands that are currently incarcerated in Oklahoma. And we would save $100 million.
$100 million a year. And now that's what we would like.
That's basically the teacher pay raise this year.
Yeah.
Plus a bunch of buses.
Yes. Like
and
that's
textbooks.
100%. I mean, that's like, and the thing is, that's when I said it's a conservative estimate. That's not even counting. Let's say that you took those 15,000 people, right, and you gave them all jobs at the state average hourly wage.
Okay. Yes.
That would be like an additional $500 million of taxable GDP.
So potentially like a $600 million boost.
Yeah.
That's $500 million.
Yeah.
That's a lot of money.
That's what it's costing us to keep people in jail.
Well, somebody should fix that.
Can we add that to our list?
I will point out that a frequent friend of the pod and guest Bo Broadwater just texted me, and yes, indeed, I am stuffed up this evening. If you're watching at home and I sound a little funny,
hey,
whatever allergies have been affecting the entire state have affected me as well. And
toast, Bo.
Hello. I'm on the tail end of this, I believe. I'm hoping it clears up before Sunday because I'm running the half marathon.
Dude, you've been on the tail end of it for 3 weeks.
No, this has only been 2 weeks because it started when I was in Dallas.
Oh, this is a different one.
Yeah.
Okay.
I had that other one before, and that one lasted a good solid 6 weeks. This one's a quick one. It's just been 2 weeks, and it really wasn't bad the first week. This week, poof, came on.
Dude, being sick's the worst.
No, I appreciate you as a physician fielding my text messages
if only you knew a doctor.
That's right, yeah. If only I worked in an infectious disease clinic, perhaps. All right, let's move on. So, number 3, cheers from Bo. Governor Stitt signs a bill to prohibit cities. Oh, this is the ban on bans.
Yes.
This is the ban.
Yes.
Banning cities from taxing plastic bags and other containers. So this essentially is that the state. So he signed it, so his name's on it. But I rest blame on the legislature for this one. In our state,
Yes.
our state loves small government. We don't want the federal government in our business, right? We don't want them down here. Just stay out of. We need local control here. Leave us alone. But then when one level down, when the cities are like, no, we want to ban plastic bags because they're bad for the environment, which is like, I've known that since I was a child, right?
Yeah, right.
And-
Like we've all seen pictures of like the dolphins and the whales,
Yes,
right?
Birds with the
Yeah.
6-pack thing around
Yeah.
their neck. That's sad. So if cities want to do it, this is again not the first time, but the state coming in and being like, we want local control, but not that local, just this like state level local. You cities, you don't know what you're doing, and so they're trying to prevent cities. They have prevented cities. They've put a ban on cities banning plastic bags
We want local control with which we agree.
that we have control over.
Yeah. Yeah.
But
No,
they
so
also, but they banned bans.
yeah, right. So like, and they banned like doing things, right? Like, so you can't raise the minimum wage, right? Like Oklahoma City
Oh, they
or
did
Tulsa
that too. Yeah.
can't have a higher minimum wage than the rest of the state. And like, so this is by Senator Lee Wright, who's from Bristow.
Would you not say, Scott, that this is a government overreach?
I mean, I wouldn't say that it's an overreach because I think it's something that the state legislature clearly has the power to do. I think it's, and so I don't think this is like, so I think of government overreach as like government trying to assert authority that it doesn't have. And I think that, and
that's a different definition than,
yeah.
I'm assuming, I'm interpreting overreach as government asserting power, which it has the authority to do, but it shouldn't on some.
Yeah, I call that stupid shit.
Well, that's fair. I mean, it's like, because it's not objective. It's an individual interpretation of what should.
Yeah, no, totally. I mean, like this is I think this one of the things that frustrates me about this bill, right, is that like it's, and maybe you could say it's government overreach in that the justification is like, this is us trying to protect you from yourselves, right? So like Senator Lee Wright, who's from Bristow, he's a Republican from Bristow, state senator, says that the reason for this is because it's a protection against overregulation. It supports manufacturing jobs and consumer freedom, right? And so we can't let cities like Oklahoma City, hurt themselves or hurt the state by, wanting to like regulate this stuff. And this, the kind of the same argument that you hear for things like raising the minimum wage. Well, we can't let Oklahoma City raise the minimum wage. That's going to like drive out jobs.
Right.
Like, well, if it does, that's like on us, right?
Right.
Like that's on our city and the companies that choose or don't choose to locate in our municipality. And so I think, I mean, maybe I'm wrong. I think this is actually more ideological than it is. I think it's more ideological than it is really philosophical or principled. I mean, just look at the next sentence here. Some 16 states, including Texas, have already adopted uniformity of commerce laws like SB 1001. I would ask the question, have they adopted laws like it, or have they adopted the same law?
Dun, dun, dun.
Right?
That's
like,
this music we don't have.
Is this a piece of? I mean, because the legislators are not required to disclose like who requests their bills or who writes their bills. Representative Colin Walkie had a bill that he ran that failed that would have required that. It's a topic for another day. But I would, if I was a betting man, I would bet that this is a piece of model legislation that is being run in state legislatures around the country by some pretty specific interest groups, perhaps people that make plastic bags.
Perhaps. Perhaps the petroleum companies.
So I think
they actually phrased it and said that it would make it too complicated for like taxes and all this stuff. I'm like, people aren't that dumb. Like,
right.
If you just can't have plastic bags, you can have plastic bags. I don't understand.
Right. Well, and I feel like, I feel like there's a lot of people now who are explicitly like requesting not to use those bags.
Yeah.
Like
my wife is one of those.
Yeah. I mean, we're the same way,
we
right?
We keep reusable bags. I keep them in the back of the car and I perpetually forget them.
We have reusables. We often wind up with paper, which we then recycle.
So that was my question: is on the whole, I don't think we have data for this, but let's say that we banned all plastic bags in the United States and only used paper again, which is like what we did when we were children.
No dolphins would ever die.
No, but is that worse for the environment because of the number of trees that would be
So I don't
murdered?
I don't have the data on that.
I know you
like
don't. That's why I'm asking you. What do you
at my
think?
fingertips. Well, if you will let me finish. But I know that data exists, and there was recently an article that I flagged to read, but I have not yet read, that was making that case. And it was making the case that paper bags are actually worse for the environment because of the energy required to recycle them, and because of
Right,
the
you got to cut it down, chop it up, blend it up,
right
make the bag.
like the creation of the bag, the number of trees that you
Right.
lose, and the energy required to then recycle that paper bag, assuming that's what happens.
Right.
So I don't know. I'm going to read that article and see if I can bring you that answer. But
I have long wanted to take all the plastic bags that we acquire and chop them up, and then use them as the fiber of like with the fiberglass resin, and like
yeah,
make it into furniture.
yeah. I mean, I think if you're really going to like get after this, like if
you
you're really
just
going to get after
glossed
this
over that,
problem,
like, that's cool.
I mean, that is cool. That is a cool idea, but I think you'd have to have a lot of bags, like a bunch. But I think if you were really going to try and address this problem, you would probably what you'd get after is like you'd get after all of the non-reusable containers, right? Like you would basically say everybody is supposed to bring your own grocery bags. How's that going to go over in these United States? Not well.
That's true.
But
That's
I think though, I think in other countries that's actually quite common, right? Like you go to the grocery store and you bring your own container, right? Like you bring your grocery bag and you carry your groceries home in your grocery bag.
Well, and some stores will charge like a nickel extra to use the plastic bag. Or you save a nickel if you use a reusable or whatever. But and so I wonder like what the actual carbon footprint. Anyway, this is a whole other podcast.
It's interesting too though because we also have I think pretty unique grocery buying habits in the U.S. Like there's
Right.
like we tend like I know a lot of families will go like a big grocery run like twice a month, right? Like that's what we
Right.
like. And when I was a kid, like my mom would go periodically, but like every month. And I know this because I had to go with her.
Right.
We had our monthly like big grocery run where we went to Crest in Midwest City with the first Crest, and we always had coupons, and I had to keep all the coupons organized, and that was where we did like our big like this month,
Right.
like our big grocery run, and then periodically we'd pick up stuff that we need.
Right.
Whereas I think in other countries it works more where like you might like walk home from work on Monday, walk by the grocery store and buy groceries for Monday and Tuesday.
Right.
And then you do that again like on Wednesday.
Right.
Like we tend, I think, to buy in bulk more.
Right.
And so this becomes a much bigger problem when you do that.
Oh, because it feels more substantial.
Yeah.
And you just can't carry a month's worth of groceries. And
Yeah.
That's true. That's funny. So growing up, we'll take a brief wander here.
Sidetracked on
Yeah, that's
memory
right.
lane.
When I was growing up, my dad was paid bi-monthly for my early childhood, and then we moved to Minnesota, the land of 10,000 lakes, and he got paid monthly. And I remember it being a big shift for my mom and how she budgeted groceries. And she's like, "Oh, we gotta go once a month." And so the first month, the whole family went. We had 2 carts that were full, and she had made a menu plan for the whole month. And the grocery store up there was like Sam's, where they had free samples. And so my dad and I like had one cart that was full, while my mom and sister like were off filling the other cart.
Dude, the samples at Sam's were the best.
And we just like hung out, and my dad's like, "Go get some pizza, go get the ice cream cone." And so I just like run. I'm like, "Can I have 2?" And come back and give him one, and just kept doing that. And then we bought all this food, and my dad's like, "I don't know where we're gonna store all this." And
you guys you didn't deep freeze?
No, just outside.
But yeah, outside freezer though, right?
No, it's Minnesota. You just throw it in the backyard.
Nice. Okay. The wolves didn't get it?
No, not in Cottage Grove.
Oh my god. We're so far gone.
In the burbs. All right, let's so next up is
Michigan. This is from the Detroit
diggity.
Detroit Free Press. How are we going to bring this home? To answer that question, ladies and gentlemen, Andy Moore.
Well, I'll tell you. So this is a loosely connected story. This is important though. So a few weeks ago we had an episode about redistricting with our intern Megan and
Megan Vanderburk.
Yes, indeed.
Yeah.
No V, but a couple F's in there.
Isn't it?
Funder.
Oh.
Funderburk, yes.
Dutch?
F. I don't know.
Oh. I'll have to ask her.
She Oklahoma Baptist. I don't. Shawnee. So although she grew up in Midwest City also. So anyway, so Michigan, they passed independent redistricting last year, I believe, up there. But the last time that it was redistricted was, of course, almost 10 years ago. And there's been a lawsuit by the League of Women Voters up there, so nonpartisan group, that several of the districts were gerrymandered. And indeed, the Supreme Court of the state of Michigan upheld that and has said that, yes, indeed, these districts were improperly drawn. And so not only do they have to go back and redraw them, they're going to have a special Senate election in next year in 2020. It wouldn't be due until 2022. So this has huge implications, right? This is one of the first big results we've had in one of these lawsuits, and certainly they will appeal it. It'll go to the Supreme Court of the United States. Whether or not they hear it, we don't know. But for right now, it is a really big deal that they're going to have to require, another statewide election it's really just for these districts to redraw them, but you can't just redraw certain districts because they touch other districts. And so it's going to have to be a whole new deal. Again, so I will say this is why we are bringing up this issue repeatedly, so that listeners and voters, talk to your friends, tell them that there's two options for how we draw our district maps, right? For congressional districts, U.S. Senate districts, and then state House and Senate districts. There's two ways to draw them. One is the way we do it now, where we let the parties draw it. And the party in power always draws it so that they stay in power, right? Like they draw what is most convenient. That's the way we've done it for a long time.
You don't think they do a great job?
I think they do a great job in their eyes, right? And it regardless of which party's in power is how they do it, right?
100%.
And so sometimes they just fall victim to trends of movement of people. But yeah, so we can do the way we've been doing it, where we let the parties draw it, or we can put it in the hands of the people. We can make an independent commission that is made up of, a third of the largest party, a third of the next largest party, and a third of everybody else. And then that committee comes together, presents the plans, shares all the data with the public, so that you and I can make our own maps. We can submit it. Maybe we make a better map than they do, right?
But the children in the Iraq who don't have maps.
This is not about Iraq. This is about Oklahoma.
Do you get the reference?
No.
Oh.
I'm too set on making sure that we have good maps here.
Miss America, 2003 or 4 or something.
Oh,
yeah.
Yes. I just
sorry. You were preaching and I derailed you.
Indeed, I had a good point there, and you took it away. All right, we'll move on. Anyway, it's a good article about redistricting and the implications of it, and I guarantee if we don't do something about redistricting in Oklahoma, and I think we will, but if we don't, we're going to be in the same boat where we're going to have lawsuit after lawsuit, and this is coming, right? So census is next year. Data comes to 2021. Redistricting occurs in late 2021, early 2022. So the next 3 years, this is going to be our reality in much other states. And if we don't do it right, then we're going to pay for it with actual tax dollars for a long time and probably mess things up.
I mean, I think that's a valid point. I think the only pushback I would give is not on whether or not we should have an independent redistricting commission, because I do think that we should. I think that one of the problems we run into is thus far the Supreme Court has declined to say that you can't do this, right? The Supreme Court seems to think that this is an appropriate exercise of political power, and the Supreme Court would say that there's nothing in the Constitution that says that you can't do this.
But
so
just because you can doesn't mean it's right.
No, 100%. But the reason that matters so much is because if we want to see this change in Oklahoma, we can't rely on a Supreme Court decision probably that's been brought by some other state, right?
No, we got to do it for ourselves.
We have to do it for ourselves. And if you want this crap to stop, right? If you want, and it's not just the way that we govern. This has to do with primaries. It has to this impacts so many things. If you want to see this nonsense stop, where people who shouldn't have a chance in a general election win the primary, right? Or the people that should win the general election have no chance in a primary, and this happens on both sides of the aisle, then things like independent redistricting are what we need, Like that's how we get to a future. It's not. It doesn't fix everything.
That's how we fix
but
this.
it's part of it is part of a few. Now my point has been hijacked. Like it's part of how we get to a future where our politics and our government work again, as opposed to being just like entrenched and constantly cycling like towards the next election.
Come on.
But anyway,
Come
all right.
on.
So this next article is absolutely hilarious. This is also one of and this is a peach that Andrew added to our list.
I shared this at a board meeting with a different organization.
From News OK.
Yeah, with so I saw this story today. I don't know how we missed this. Did it come out today?
So and I heard a little bit about it yesterday and then forgot to add it to our like Slack chat. But
nice. So the headline is 2 Oklahoma county officials trade accusations. And so I will tell you and our listeners that right off the bat, I had a hunch about who one of these people were.
No.
And I was right. It
No.
was indeed Kevin Calvi, former House Rep and now Oklahoma County Commissioner Kevin Calvi. But I wasn't sure who the other one was, and I wondered if it was one of his fellow county commissioners. But indeed, no. It was the county sheriff, P.D. Taylor.
Yep.
So they've been feuding for a few weeks, right? You may remember that Calvi brought in an entourage and was going to like audit the jail. He was not allowed to do that. But then subsequently they discovered that they had lost a few people in the jail that had been there for months and had never gone to court or anything.
It wasn't great.
So like he kind of did it with some pomp and circumstance, and he probably shouldn't have. But also he was right in that there were things that were missing. So like that was a little vindicating, I think, to his camp. So they're arguing about how money is spent. Commissioner Calvi postulates that the sheriff is misspending money. In Commissioner Calvi's opinion, and quote, he says he is grossly misspending money on other things such as patrolling the whole county. Meaning the sheriff, who's charged with, yes, running the jail, but also patrolling the county, right?
All of it.
All the county.
The
whole county.
All like however many like hundreds of thousands of square miles of it.
And so
or tens of thousands, I don't know how big it is.
And so it was just funny that like he's like, well, he's spending $14 million of this not in the jail, and he's misspending it patrolling the whole county. And I was like, that's
Things like having deputies around the whole county. And that's just who'd have thought that
I'm sure that there was more to the quote, but that was all that was in the story, and I just thought it was funny.
Well, and this
That if I was Commissioner Calvi and that was the quote, I'd be I would be pissed. I don't know if Calvi is, but I'd just be like, listen, there's more to this. But on the surface, I think for the average Oklahoma voter to read that and be like, oh, he's mad that the sheriff was patrolling the county.
Well, and the reason it might matter, so the sheriff's like response to this whole kerfuffle, if you will, is quote, he's got to make a big splash because he's running for U.S. Congress.
Right.
End quote.
Because Calvi is indeed rumored to be one who might throw his hat into the ring for Congressional District 5.
Operative word is rumored. He has run twice before, unsuccessfully.
Really?
Yes. He says he is not running for Congress now. Operative word now. So we'll see if we're going to get to the the Oklahoma's 5th congressional district race. We'll get to that here in a minute. But yeah, just go on the Oklahoma and or newsok.com and read this article about the county commissioner meeting. It reads like an episode of like, I don't know, like Days of Our Lives or something.
It's a short article, but it was real funny. Just, the phrase that all politics is local never ceases to amaze me with stuff like this, where it's just like,
yeah, but it's so true.
It's so true, but it's just like, you know what it's like? It's like when I was a kid and I would read in the local paper, they would print all the like police reports, like all the calls that week.
The police blotter.
Yes. But it's like that just on the county level. But it's 2019 and these are adults. Are we not? This isn't like a strange man in the alley behind your house. These are elected officials that are accusing other elected officials of doing their job.
They say school boards and city councils, it's where 90% of the governing that really matters happens.
It's definitely true.
Who said it?
Leslie Knope.
Jeb Bartlett.
Oh, okay. Well, a different TV show then.
Hashtag West Wing.
I am Thinking of Leslie Knope today, since Joe Biden threw his hat in the ring. I'm sure the fictitious character is rejoicing somewhere.
He's precious cargo.
That's right, precious cargo. So the next story is also from News OK that a lawsuit claims
Weird.
Oklahoma FSAA director threatened farmers. I didn't read this at all.
We are.
Oh, is this about?
This is Biggs.
This is about.
This is your buddy Biggs,
former Representative
Scott Biggs.
Scott Biggs.
Yeah. What do you mean you didn't read it?
I did read it.
I was like, I specifically asked you if you'd read it.
I apologize. I didn't get the acronym. What does FSAA stand for?
I don't know the answer to.
Spacesuits and armors.
You talk. Give me a minute, and I'll tell you.
All right. Well, so this article basically is about former Oklahoma House Rep Scott Biggs, who arguably single-handedly stalled all criminal justice reform measures for a number of years. He's a former DA. He's a crime and punishment kind of guy, and he would stall bills or stop bills for reasons that I get that were good in his mind, but I feel like he inhibited the greater good. So he left to go work for the Trump administration doing something. Do you remember?
I don't remember.
I want to say it was at the USDA, actually.
Look and see.
But anyway, so he left last year, and I don't think anyone knew that he was back in Oklahoma. But now he works for the Oklahoma Farm Bureau.
Yes, and so he was. No, so FSA is the State Farm Service Agency. That's FSA.
So not even the Farm Bureau. Something else.
The State Farm Service Agency. And so this is essentially what this is he is being accused of unlawfully threatening farmers and blocking $1 billion industry from taking root in Oklahoma. This specifically has to do with the planting of industrial hemp, which is a big topic of discussion right now because you may or may not know this, but Oklahoma's agricultural climate is actually kind of like ideally suited to growing hemp. We spend a lot of time and a lot of resources and a lot of money trying to make, especially the western half of the state, suitable for other kinds of agriculture, where it can be very successful if you have like a lot of irrigation and whatnot. But the hemp plant, I'm not a farmer myself, but my understanding is that the hemp plant actually would grow quite well in Oklahoma's kind of natural like soil and climate. And so this is potentially like this is an industry that could be in the billions of dollars. And
we desperately need to diversify our
apparently revenue. A former senator or representative.
Who?
What was he? Biggs. What was he?
Representative.
Yeah. He apparently told the farmers that if they were to take part in the industrial hemp program that the legislature has enacted, they could lose their existing loans from the Farm Service Agency, and they could potentially even like face criminal charges because the FSA operates under the USDA. So because it's a federal program and cannabis is illegal at the federal level, and hemp is grown from the cannabis plant.
That's so bananas.
And this is an interesting issue because like Eccles, right, Senator or Representative Eccles, who's the floor leader in the House, is basically like, and he is a huge proponent of industrial hemp in Oklahoma.
Indeed.
He's like, Biggs has no like authority to make this kind of a determination. So it's really interesting. I mean, it's an interesting spat between a former member of the House Republican Caucus and a current member of the House Republican Caucus.
Interesting. All right, we've got about 10 minutes left, and we've got 2 important topics plus some announcements. The first one.
What does that music mean?
I'm going to turn it way up.
Longtime listeners of the show will know what that, Scott Pruitt, he's the gift that keeps on giving. We have a Pruitt watch for you today. If you're into that kind of thing, our first article, regarding former Attorney General for the state of Oklahoma and EPA Administrator Scott Pruitt, is, from the Indiana Star. The Indiana Star, it's reported about a week ago that Mr. Pruitt, described as, quote, the embattled former administrator of the U.S. EPA, registered as a lobbyist in Indiana.
In the state of Indiana.
They said it is unclear what exactly Mr. Pruitt is working on or who he is meeting with, but he has ties to the Indiana coal industry. Shocking. So the Star did some looking into his company and found ties to a couple of the state's large coal producers, the Indiana Coal Council, and apparently this has to do with a plan in Indiana to try and shut down Indiana's coal-fired power plants,
which had already been shut down.
Well, now you're getting to the you're getting ahead. You're like throwing the punchline before you finish the joke.
It's so like you can't even get there because that's the point, right? It was a done deal, and he came in and was like, I can get these to stay open.
Yeah. So they anyway. There's an effort to shut these coal-fired power plants down, and so when the Star was like investigating this, they went to the Speaker of the House in Indiana and said like, hey, Scott Pruitt, seems like he's around here. Is he working on coal? And the Speaker of the House said, quote, my advice when I was asked that, if it was a productive interaction, was it's too late. Apparently they have some great facts. Those facts should have been shared perhaps before the bill was voted on and defeated. So I don't see it coming back.
No. Yes.
So we that was our initial story, and then there was an update from the AP, and this was yesterday, saying ex-EPA Chief Pruitt's Indiana lobbying bid has likely failed.
Right.
And indeed it seems to have. So it looks like he was lobbying for about a week or so after the bill had already been voted on. I hope that I don't know if those are billable hours or not. But
so I heard a stat the other day that if you had to guess, and I'll ballpark it, I'll give you plus or minus 20,000. How many coal workers are there in the United States?
Plus or minus 20,000?
Yeah.
I'm going to say 40,000.
All right, so Google says 50. If you were going to guess how many solar panel installers there are in the United States.
Do I get the same plus or minus?
Yeah.
I'm going to say 100,000.
That's the number that I had heard as well, is that there were roughly 120,000, 100 to 120,000. And so it's just funny to me that for an industry that we all know is dying for a variety of reasons, health, economy, ecology, those reasons, that the director of the EPA, former director of the EPA, is still trying to like prop this up. And my heart goes out to families and people who live in coal mining towns that's their, my brother-in-law is from West Virginia, and that's a big deal out there. But it's just not where the world is going, right? Like we have more knowledge now about where it's going, and so you gotta make a change.
Work is work, and you got to find a job. But it's tough. It's tough to be. I have a lot of I feel a lot for people who are in industries that are slowing down or going away, and it's like if you're a 50-year-old coal miner who's 15 years away from retirement, like, do you retrain for another job? Or do you do you put all your, do you keep all your eggs in that basket? I mean, I don't know what you do, right?
Well, if that's all that's in your town,
right? So and especially when you look at some of the communities like West Virginia, right? Like, is one of the, West Virginia is one of the states in the country that has a huge population of coal miners. But Oklahoma, there's significant coal mining activity in Oklahoma.
Really?
Yeah, I think in southeastern Oklahoma.
Oh yeah, McAllister has that huge. I have a picture in front of that giant lump of coal. Like the largest lump of coal ever discovered in America.
So a lot of those are communities that are hurting in a lot of ways, not just from the loss of like economic activity that comes with the slowdown in coal.
Yeah.
So
all right,
I don't know. We don't have the answer, but neither does Scott Pruitt apparently. So our last item tonight. So this is arguably, we saved it for last, and we don't have a whole lot of time. But this is arguably, in some ways, this is the biggest news of the week because it's going to be a story we're going to be talking about for the next 18 months. Yesterday, State Senator Stephanie Bice, Republican of kind of Deer Creek, Edmond area, Northwest Oklahoma City, declared that she is challenging. She's entering the race. She's not challenging her yet because she hasn't won the primary, but she is entering the race for the Republican nomination to challenge Congresswoman Kendra Horn to represent Oklahoma in Oklahoma's 5th congressional district. Andy, what are your What are your thoughts, reaction to this?
Two thoughts. First of all, we haven't ever had Stephanie on the show yet. She's come to some of our Capitol crawls and stuff, I know, and she's, I think, a friend of our organization. I've known Stephanie since before she was in office. Um, it just as an outside observer on the Twitterverse, I feel like her announcement made not quite the splash that I think she was hoping for. And again, Twitter, as our friend that we don't know, Nate Silver, would say, that the response on Twitter is not necessarily reflective of the voting base, but it seems like some of the majority of responses were somewhat negative towards her running, not because she's running, but because of the tone of her initial announcement, right? So it was carefully worded, and if you read through it, again, everyone's gonna have their hot take, and I'll try to like read it as plainly as you can. It said, like, we need to basically defeat Kendra Horn.
I've got it pulled up right here.
Okay, read it.
So she said on her Twitter account, she said, "I'm proud to be part of Oklahoma's turnaround and my record tackling big problems with conservative solutions that grow our economy. Washington can learn from Oklahoma, but to end the Pelosi majority, we have to flip the fifth. I'm in. Who's with me? BiasForCongress.com." So that was her.
Okay, so let me address that real quick. So I think people bumped on the fact that she said flip the fifth, which is what Kendra used. No one's got a trademark on that. I would say the fact that it's only been on the opposite party for like 5 months doesn't really make for a flip back, but I get that it's good wording and you got to use it. I reclaim the fifth is probably more of a accurate description, but that doesn't have the same ring
Take
to
it back.
Right. And then are you pulling up her like press release basically?
Yeah.
So the press release says something like to defeat Nancy Pelosi and her.
So her press release says Washington is seized by gridlock and runaway spending and a Democratic House majority that has embraced socialist policies and big government solutions. In Congress, I'll do what I've done in Oklahoma, tackle big problems head on, and work to deliver conservative solutions that grow our economy for hardworking Oklahoma taxpayers. We can't have a representative who answers to Nancy Pelosi and a far left socialist agenda.
Okay, so a bunch of that is, in my opinion, like boilerplate, like Republican stuff, right? Like, so Washington gridlock, people on both sides of the aisle complain about that, right? Like every candidate says, "Oh, I'm going to defeat Washington gridlock." No one's done it for hundreds of years. That's the way it is, but it's great to run on. There's general like boo Democrat boogeyman, like big government, lots of spending, those things that every Republican candidate will say about Democrats. And then, but that last line that a candidate or a person who answers to Nancy Pelosi and her socialist left-wing agenda, the part about that, like I totally understand why Stephanie would use that language, right? Because that's the language you need to appeal to your base, and it's not untrue, right? So Nancy Pelosi.
No, it is untrue though.
Well,
it is untrue.
Well, yeah, okay, I know where you're going.
Yeah,
but I'll say the first part. There's two parts of that sentence, right? So the first part is that Nancy Pelosi is the Speaker of the House, and as such, arguably everyone kind of answers to her to some degree, right? Like she's the
If you're a member of the House of Representatives, you answer to her.
right. So the rest of the delegation, Mark Wayne Mullen and Lucas and all those guys, answer to her as well. However, Kendra being the only Democrat from Oklahoma, she answers to her perhaps more directly, and so, but she's still her own person. So like, yes, she's of that party. The second part of Pelosi's socialist left-wing agenda and this is getting into the weeds. Arguably, Pelosi is not the farthest left socialist in the U.S. Congress, right? Like,
yeah, I mean,
this is like boogeyman, like Bernie Sanders, AOC, those kind of things,
right? Like, I would even say not even arguably, like it's just true that she's not.
Now,
and when you talk about socialist agenda, the agenda that has been like none of the items that have been like proposed by people like Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez, the actual like socialists, none of those things have been brought up for a vote in the U.S. House. And as far as I know, none of them will be, right? So, like, I guess, like, what struck me about this is, like, this was a very, like, to me, two things. One, so this press release talking about the race that she's trying to run, like, never mentioned her opponent, right? Like,
okay, she's actually because
she's
as
not,
you said,
I mean, one, she's not her opponent yet, right?
right.
But,
She has to run for the primary first, and before she ever gets
Right.
to fight, you got to like fight the little boss before you fight the big boss, like in every video game.
but it said it was, to me. I mean, I guess I look at political announcements like this in like, kind of, are you doing? And if I can summarize it, if I can kind of trying to think of the best word here. Are you trying to inspire people to vote for you? Are you trying to make people afraid of something else? And to me, this is a release that's trying to make people afraid of something else. And that can work as a political tactic.
Sure.
And it often works as a political tactic.
Fear is very motivating.
People do it on both sides. But, like, I don't know. I mean, I guess, right? Like,
all right, so let's do it this way. We'll both do this on a scale of 1 to 10. 10 being terrible. 1 being terrible. 10 being the best. How would you rate this announcement as a Republican and as a Democrat?
I mean, I think if you're a Democrat, I think you look at this and you're just like, seriously? Like, I think that's the reaction that I heard from Democrats.
What's
like,
your number?
On a 1 out of 10, I mean, I think that, at least based on my Twitter feed, the Democratic response has been overwhelming, like 0, 1, like.
I would have said 3 or 4.
Really?
Yeah, it could have been way worse. She didn't go.
I guess maybe I
misunderstood.
Yeah, I guess maybe I misunderstood. Like, what a 0 is. That, I mean, like, if you're.
Well, first of all, I said 1 to 10. 0 wasn't on the scale. But if you want to be particular,
I mean, yeah, I okay. To your point, like, that's probably fair. That's probably fair. And in terms of like Republican spawns, I mean, I think it's been varied. Like, again, on my Twitter feed, that I saw Republicans that were like. I mean, I saw Republican representatives and Republican senators that were like, hell yes, like, saddle up, let's do this.
But were they state level folks? Because some of that is like friendship, right?
Yeah. So
I'm a friend of the pod, Greg McCourtney from Ada.
Yeah.
I know him and Senator Bice are close, and I totally get it. So he had a positive response, but his tweet does not necessarily indicate his personal analysis of how good or bad
well, I guess
politics were.
okay. I guess if you're asking me as a Democrat or a Republican, like, how do I rate the politics of it? Then yeah, I think the Democrats would probably say like 3 or 4. Like, okay, that's definitely going to appeal to some people, but she's not running in rural Oklahoma. She's running in the metro.
So that's an important distinction.
So that's a huge distinction, right? I think that when you look at she's using Kevin Stitt's campaign team, right? So
from
Indiana. So she hired the same consulting group that Kevin Stitt used, which on the one hand you'd be like, I mean, everybody said this race was a toss-up, and I mean, Governor Stitt won in I think an overwhelming, I wouldn't say a landslide, but like certainly a decisive victory. There wasn't anything close about it. But she's running for an office that is largely centered on one of the 3 counties that he lost, right?
On Oklahoma County.
Yeah, and
did he lose Oklahoma County?
Yeah, so he lost Oklahoma County, he lost Cleveland County, and Muskogee. So she hired his campaign team to run her campaign that's centered on a county that he lost.
So I think it's going to be really curious, to see what the climate is like in 2020.
But the other thing, I think that the easy take is that, like, oh, this is for the Republican primary. I don't know that in CD5 that it helps her as much in the Republican primary. There are certainly people that are very enthusiastic, but I can tell you. So I spoke to. Now this was off the cuff. These are people that I know personally, and these are people that are interested in politics, right? Like, they want to know kind of who's running, and they think about who they vote for, but they don't get on Twitter. They don't follow it at the level that, like, you or I do, or that some of us do. But I said, hey, did you hear that, Senator Bice, like, had announced that she's running? And they said, oh, who? And she's this district. And I said, yeah. And I said, did you see her announcement? And I showed them her announcement speech, or her announcement kind of tweet. And I mean, their initial reaction was not great. Like, they were kind of like, and these are both women that are, they're professionals. They live in Northwest Oklahoma City. That's where they kind of live and work around. And they were like, oh, that's not a great look, was their analysis.
Right.
I don't know if that's representative or not. I think the reason that's important to note is because that demographic is who she has to win, because I think you can make a strong case that that's the demographic that Congresswoman Horn won on.
Yeah. So I think the other interesting point is that I think a lot of people who would have been potential supporters had Stephanie Bice run against Steve Russell 2 years ago or last year, I guess, whenever that was. I think she would have had a lot of folks get behind her, right? Especially if Kendra hadn't run. Like, I think Stephanie would have garnered a lot of support from both sides of the aisle, even against someone of her own party. Obviously, she wouldn't do that for political reasons, but I think she would have had a more effective race against him and could have beat him in the primary, honestly. And I think the tone of this message hit a lot of more centrist folks on both sides of the aisle a little weird. And I'm sure she's bummed about that, but I understand that. I think that probably had to be the case because she was trying to appeal to members of her base, which are typically going to be more conservative.
Sure. I mean, and just for me, like the reason that there's a bunch of reasons that it didn't resonate with me. One, I mean, I'm a Democrat, right? Like I've said on the show, right? Like don't try to hide that. I'm sure it comes out. The stuff I say.
Not a closet dam over there.
Right, especially
What?
Right, especially after a couple glasses of whiskey. But I like Stephanie, and I respect her, and she's done some good things in the Senate. I shouldn't call her Stephanie because we've met a few times. I don't have the relationship with her that I do that you do. I like Senator Bice, but I think looking at this, I'm like I kind of evaluate it in the same way that I evaluate like. There's a lot of candidates that are running for the Democratic nomination for president right now, right? Like there's like 22 people in the field. And right. I can tell you one of the first things that I look for when I'm kind of trying to decide like who do I get behind? Are you running against President Trump? Or are you running for something?
Sure.
Right?
Well, and that's
like,
yeah.
And I
if
do
you don't
like
stand for something, you'll fall for anything.
Well, and you and I have talked about this. Like we talked about it on the show, and we've talked about it in private in our like never-ending text stream. But like, I think that most people are susceptible to being scared.
Mm-hmm.
But I think nearly everyone wants to be inspired.
Mm-hmm.
Right? Like
Yep.
that's what we
fair.
want,
Mm-hmm.
right? And that's true on the right, it's true on the left, right? People didn't vote for Barack Obama because they were scared of John McCain or Mitt Romney. I mean, I think maybe some did, but they voted for him because he inspired them. People didn't vote for Reagan because they were afraid of Jimmy Carter. They voted for Reagan because they were inspired at the idea of his leadership.
Yeah, but Scott, I am blown away at this realization I just had about. So I've seen a bunch of maps and data about the trends of elections over the last 50 years, 60 years, right? You've read this book I'm reading called Uncivil Agreement that kind of tracks some of that. It's a really great book. Everyone should read it. But it's
Getting the author on the show is one of our never-ending to-dos.
Yes, we're going to do that. But think back to those elections, right? So honestly, I will say this, as a registered independent now, but as I was a Republican when Obama ran, the first time at least, the election, an election, even today, between Obama, McCain, and Romney, the tone of that feels potentially inspiring to a degree that I think we've forgotten in this country, right? The other election, but just like there were things about Romney that were inspiring, things about McCain that were certainly inspiring.
Right.
What happened, man? Like
right.
I agree that Obama was perhaps more inspiring than those guys, and I admit that I voted for him both times. But like, I'm literally boggled. My mind is boggled right now thinking about hearing the idea of like McCain and what's her face,
Sarah Palin.
Yes, them like running against Obama and Biden, and then both trying to cast their vision for America is so far gone from where our country is right now.
Right.
That's, I think, what our country misses. Certainly, many people miss Obama, but like, I miss just the general rhetoric of like, this guy's bad, but in this different way, but not like the pure like pure hatred of stuff that we have going on right now.
Yeah, and that's what you know.
Think
From
about that.
from like no, I mean you're 100% right, and I think that's what I. And you know the other the other part of this we're there was another announcement today. So Senator Bice is not the only person who's running in the primary. Terry Neese, who is a local businesswoman and kind of long time, I don't want to say operative, but like she's worked in Republican politics for a long time.
Yeah, she's been around.
Mick Cornett. There's always the perennial speculation of whether Mayor Mick is going to get in the race. I guess I would like to see, just like in the Democratic primary for a presidential nominee, I would like to see the race take on the tone of like where you want to take the country, not just why President Trump is wrong, right? Like, Lord knows you want to get me started on why President Trump is wrong. I'll give you 1,000 reasons, but like, I don't want to vote for someone just because they like hate Trump the most, right? Or like they make me the most afraid of what another 4 years of President Trump means.
Right.
I want to vote for someone that casts a vision for me of where the country, like not just where the country should go, but like where the country can go.
Yes.
Like someone who wants to bring us forward. And I think that that's what we should demand of our leaders, right? Like if you honestly think that Kendra Horn is a far left socialist who like worships at the altar of Nancy Pelosi, then I guess you can come out and say that. Like if that's what you think, but if that's a tactic to generate votes, like,
is that reflective of the candidate or of the voters?
I mean both, but I think that part of your job I guess you can take two approaches as a candidate, right? You can try and think, what do the voters want to hear, and say that, or you can say, I'm going to convince the voters that my vision is the right one.
All right.
Whether that's what they want to hear or not, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
And I hope that that's what I think that's what we should demand of our politics on either side of the aisle. And so as we look at the next 18 months of the Republican primary and then the general election in Congressional District 5, I hope that's what we see. I worry that in the current political climate it won't be, but I hope that it is. Mm-hmm. And if Senator Bice wants to come on the show and talk about this, I'd love it. Yeah. I'd love to have her on. So
she's a big proponent of liquor laws. We can invite her here.
Yeah, and that's the other thing is like she's done some good things in the Senate. Like she spearheaded the alcohol modernization laws. She's certainly you can say she's worked across the aisle. Like she's carried bills. She has carried Democratic bills in the Senate. She's asked Democrats to carry her bills in the House. So like, that's like,
people they all would be like, oh, that we're on the same team. And it's like, no, we're not on the same team, but it's okay. We can get along.
Right. Like that's the thing. You don't have to be on the same team to like fight with, I don't know, dignity.
Yeah. Yeah. That works. All right. Well, let's, on that note, so yeah, you mentioned that Terry Neese entered the race. Mick Cornett may or may not. We've got 18 months to speculate about that. Scott and I are perpetually contemplating the idea of a national politics podcast, but for now, we're going to stay focused here on the state level. A couple of other highlights we do want to make about the past week. Today, the House Bill 1018, which is the HIV education mandate update. We've mentioned that before on here. It has not been updated since 1987, and a whole lot has changed in the past 32 years. 32 years. So that passed the Senate floor today. It has only one more procedural vote before it goes to Governor Stitt's desk for signature. As someone who has worked in the HIV field for a third of that time, that is tremendously exciting. This is a huge step. Even President Trump has said that he wants to end the HIV epidemic in America, and we are working towards that here in Oklahoma. I am proud to say I can talk all day about stats for that. Also this week, a bill that was at least co-authored by Senator Kay Floyd, right, about consent. In addition, Oklahoma historically and now teaches abstinence education in their sex ed, which is indeed true. It is perhaps not adequate, but it is true that the best way to prevent pregnancy and STDs is just to not do it. Not going to do it. However, People do it. They get pregnant. They get STDs. So this also adds to that a level of consent education, teaching students what consent actually means, which is very important. You should not gonna do it. You should not do it unless you have consent of the other party. It should be a consensual thing. So that's really great. House Bill 1003. That is the bill we discussed a few weeks ago about environmental self-policing. That is where businesses it passed, which is maybe not what we hoped.
Was sent to the governor. I don't know that he signed it yet.
He hasn't signed it, but it passed yesterday. But I'm sure he will. It basically it kind of erodes the Open Records Act. Basically, it supposedly incentivizes businesses to audit themselves about how their business is harming the environment, because it incentivizes them by keeping it private. And as we said in this show, in our opinion, we don't have to incentivize someone to do the right thing. It seems like
a terrible idea.
Right. Why do we have to incentivize businesses to do the right thing? Why not just tell them, don't pollute, and if you do, you're going to get busted for it, and we're going to fine you. And that's the case, right? So, and also try to run your business and be as ecologically friendly as you can. I know that sometimes profit is at the other expense of that, but
I'm sorry I was distracted.
That's fine.
I just was notified that there's an Instagram account that's for male of the husky.
Who?
She's a dog.
Okay.
A very cute dog.
And then 2 quick notes. There's a state question last year about optometrists in big box stores that failed, but apparently those bills are making their way through the legislature again with very little fanfare. So once again, sometimes the vote of the people doesn't seem to matter. And then up next, starting any day now, we're really going to be close to the budget. They have said they're 80% the way there, or 90% the way there, which is a number they made up in their heads.
But they also said the last 10% requires 90% of the work, which makes you think, so you're 80% there, so another 10%, and then you'll start working on
This
it?
feels like a fraction math problem, and I'm not great at those. All right, so on that note, let's wrap up. A couple of quick announcements. Don't forget that in just a week from now, A Night to Remember, our adult prom fundraiser at 21C Museum Hotel. Tickets are reduced by 50% since last week. They are only $50 now. This is a fundraiser, but I'll tell you what, $50 is cheap. That includes 2 drink tickets, and that alone is worth $22 right there. I did the math because I talked to the venue. So half your price is going to pay for your booze. There'll be snacks as well, a DJ, dancing, great photos. Scott and I will be there.
We will be there.
Bunch of folks. Hurry up, get your tickets. They're going soon. If you want to pre-order a boutonniere or corsage, you got to get it in before May 1st. Let's fix this ok.org/prom for all those details. Next Wednesday after next, May 8th, will be our next Capitol Day. That is going to be Child Advocacy Day at the Capitol. We are partnering with OICA, the Oklahoma Institute for Child Advocacy. For that, there is a luncheon as well. If you'd like to come to the luncheon, it is free, but there's a recommended donation of $100. Bonus, you get to go to the governor's pool house, basically, and walk by the big Oklahoma-shaped pool, which I think is kind of awesome.
I haven't seen the Oklahoma-shaped pool.
I'll take a selfie and post it, because that's new on my bucket list, is to get to have a let's fix this pool party at
the governor's mansion.
That would be legit.
You can make that happen.
Indeed. All right, for those in healthcare or interested in healthcare, Oklahoma Policy Institute, they had the rally. That was yesterday. So that's
yesterday. Old announcement.
That's off the script. All right, well, on that end, thanks for listening. Thanks for sticking with us for a little over an hour. Have a great week. We'll see you next week with an appropriately lengthed episode.